Good afternoon, everyone. I'm assuming everyone here knows a little bit about education. So let's take a look. Let's make a comparison. Education versus the typical business model. Typical business models, we can think about agriculture. We can talk about aviation, the sciences, technology, our tech fields. Compared to education, they are expanding, they're evolving, these groups are innovating. Education, in comparison, is holding relatively flat. So let's look at a piece of technology. Many of you do not remember have experienced the first phone on the slide. Early 1900s, you used to pick up a receiver, click a lever, talk to an operator, talk to a real person, try to connect the call. Then we evolved into the rotary phone, where we had to choose a digit and spin a dial, and it would click back, and you choose the next one. You kept going. You had to dedicate part of your day to make a phone call. Then we moved into the push buttons. This was exciting. You could just rattle off a number as fast as you could, dial your local radio station, try to win a prize. Had to keep all those numbers in your head. Remember, we had those thing called memory. And then we moved to the cordless phone. This was exciting. You could pick it up and walk outside. You could go get the mail. It's quite powerful. Then all of a sudden, the cell phone came. I remember 2001, 2002, right around in there, everybody, I felt like, had some sort of flip phone, cell phone, something like, pull the antenna out. And then came the iPhone. From the time we had the iPhone until the device that we hold in our hands now, or similar device, exponential growth. So when is education going to have that iPhone moment? Let's make another comparison. 1910 classroom. I'm assuming not many of you were there. Comparison to over 100 years later, education model. There's our classroom on the right. Super similar, or our classrooms are, many of them are like that. A lot more plastic on the picture on the right. And every student that would sit in those desks has a phone. Something else that's been connected to education for a very long time is the assessment and the accountability system. And within that system, we have state-mandated testing. And of that state-mandated tests, of all that we could do, we've been hyper-focused on two, English and math. You may have heard about it. You may have experienced it. And we've been using these two scores to gauge good schools, bad schools, improving schools. And we continue to double down, like that is the determiner to say what's good, what's not. And then we have ideas about goals for our schools. We're going to raise those test scores by 10%. We're going to raise by 7.5% this year. And we keep pushing at it. And we create departments, and departments that are creating departments to analyze and make tests and keep looking at the same data. But the reality is, we've been doing this for so long, 30, 40, 50 years. If we just added 1% for every one of those years, wouldn't have we all been at 100% proficient by now? I wonder. Billions and billions of dollars get pushed into assessment models and assessing our students and pushing for this English and this math elusive numbers, tests, and accomplishments. But this is fascinating. So if you look at the top, graduation rates. Super common in the United States. Thousands of high schools, graduation rates, 97%, 98%. Some of them hit 100%. Some waver at 94%. They can vary, but it's super common to have a high rate like 97%. It's also very common to have English and math scores on your state testing of 62%, 65%, 71%. And there's a massive swing between your graduation rate and your test scores. The question in the middle, it's the relevance. Where do our stakeholders hold their relevance? Our parents, our students. It lands in the graduation rate. That's the prize. After graduation, pathways open up, your whole community's behind you, all of your stakeholders are focused on that prize. Your stakeholders are not focused on a state test. I'm going to go back in time again. 1979, I was finishing the first grade. Also, I was finishing the 1970s, two things, a big accomplishment. Made it through the 70s and the first grade. What met me at the end of the first grade was another report card. And that report card back then had all the big courses, English, math, science, social studies. But then it had the subcategories below that teased out some ideas like writing skills, vocabulary. But the thing that was fascinating about this report card is that there was a whole section, a whole page of plays well with others, works in a small group well, works in a large group, independent thinker, is creative. The list went on, and it was like the back page. And it was a check mark if you did well. It was a plus if you were excellent, outstanding. And a minus if you're not doing so good, Greg. And what this did is it started to create the whole child, a picture of the whole child. That's become a trendy word in education in the last 11 years or so. But back then, we were really close to delivering that to parents and our stakeholders, like, hey, this is the big picture. You don't get 5 grades or 6 grades and 6 letters. Like this, it started to do that. We need to return to that somehow to have an efficient assessment model. And it comes from focusing on point of contact to point of exit. From the moment we meet our students to the moment they exit. And that doesn't have to be 10 years later, 12 years later. That could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 11 weeks. You can play with that parameter, but there's always growth between the point of contact to the point of exit, way beyond a letter grade, way beyond one assessment. What it doesn't look like is this. In high school, for example, well, let's just start with this. Point of contact to point of exit, and we're going to take a state test score for a couple days in a spring and say, yep, your student's doing well, your student's not doing well, your school's not doing well. That doesn't seem quite right. And in high school, 4 years of testing, 4 years of school, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, we only test the 11th graders. And we're going to use these scores to say, hey, your student's doing well, or your school's doing well, or not. The reality is it needs to be something like this, where there's a category of not just assessments, but not just evaluations, but a collection of scores and scores of data pieces that start to create a picture of the whole child and collect that and report that. So we think about, from the time we meet our students, 75% of their lives are with us by the time they graduate. 4 and 5-year-olds, 17, 18-year-olds, 75% of their lives, they're in our schools, they're with us. And we're going to quantify all that. We're going to collect all that information from this long game of point of contact to point of exit with a test score. That's not accurate. How do we tell their story? One test score? I don't think so. If you get your mathematicians and your engineers together and say, hey, we need to evaluate our schools, what should we do? We should use one test score. They're not going to say that. The mathematician's going to say, well, it's not mathematically viable. Your engineer is going to say, we need to build a better model. We should test this. We should try this. Oh, you want to capture the whole? Oh, well, we need to add this. And you're going to have this beautiful collection of, this is how we're going to show it. But we teach mathematical theory in our schools, and we teach engineering, but we don't use those skills to look back on ourselves and say, hey, maybe we should change this up a bit. Something that's connected to that prize we talked about earlier is graduation and the road after. The road after has had, for 100 years, has had 4 stops. 2-year, 4-year military, get a job. You ever heard that before? We've been citing it through our parents and generations for a long time, because it's been true. After high school, go to a 2-year program, 4-year program, join the military, or go get a job. That's what's come out of our school cycle. However, our students are different now. They're different here, they're different here. How could they not be surrounded by all of these business models that keep evolving and keep innovating? They're living in that world, and a flat line for education. We all say for decades in different generations, we say, well, yeah, our kids are different nowadays. But they truly are. And it's not because of hairstyles, music, or fashion. I can't believe they're wearing that nowadays. I can't believe they listen to that kind of music. That used to be our chatter, but the road after graduation stayed the same. Now, it's more like this. Still 2-year, 4-year military, get a job. Or you can go to a training academy for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, sometimes 4 days. You can go for 1.5 years and leave with a career level wage that dwarfs anything from generations prior. It's an incredible time for our students. And your schools that are innovating from your young ages all the way through are understanding that. And then our stakeholders are starting to see it and creating schools and pathways to connect to a pathway within a high school to connect with the pathways outside of high school. Schools are able to do that. It starts to create roadways like that after high school. It's really exciting. The same way it can be scary to parents and students because there's so many choices. But the choices are real. So if we want to improve schools, we want to improve accountability systems, we want to create pathways, it lands in the relevance to our stakeholders. Innovation lives there too. Thank you.